Whether you call it Kveik, Kvik, or Kvike, there's no denying that this unique Norwegian yeast has had a remarkable impact on the brewing scene, and Imperial Yeast's A43 Loki is one of the best versions out there. With the ability to produce a clean beer when fermented as warm as 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius, you heard that right, while also performing well at more standard ale temperatures, Imperial Yeast A43 Loki is as versatile as it gets, meaning you have zero excuses for failing to brew throughout the year. Learn more about A43 Loki at imperialyeast.com and grab a pouch for your next batch to see what all the fuss is about. A few weeks ago, we dropped a Brews Views episode where contributor Will Lovell and I shared our thoughts on the American Homebrewers Association and the recent changes announced to their annual Homebrew Con. As expected, we received quite a bit of feedback from folks who listened to that episode and had some thoughts of their own that they wanted to share. This is the Brewlosophy Podcast. I'm your host, Marshall Schott, and joining me on this episode is contributor Steve Thanos. We're going to be sharing some of the feedback that we received from listeners on that last episode and doing our best to provide some thoughtful responses.
There's a lot of response that we received from this. I have my own thoughts. So yeah, I agree. This should be a really fun episode to talk about and see where it lands us after this.
Yeah, given how big the Brewers Association and the AHA are, relatively at least, I was curious as to whether we'd get some pushback from them after releasing that original episode. But as of this point, we haven't, and I think that's just speaks at least a little bit to the reality that we weren't trying to denigrate anyone. We were just sharing our thoughts and our experiences, or those thoughts that were based on our experiences with that organization. Now, this may very well be due to also to the fact they simply haven't listened to the show. Who knows? Which is all good. Or perhaps they actually listened to what we were talking about, read the comments online, and maybe they realized we're not as crazy as some people like to think or spin us as being. Anyway, I feel it's only right to give our listeners the opportunity to voice their opinions, and I'm looking forward to chatting about some of these comments with you today, Steve. All right, if you're a fan of this show and you'd like to receive a reward for your support, please consider becoming a patron of Brewlosophy over at patreon.com/Brewlosophy. By making a small monthly pledge, you'll receive rewards like access to unpublished contributor recipes, unique discounts at YakimaValleyHops.com, and an invitation to a monthly live Q&A session with somebody in the brewing world. This month's guest is Brewlosophy's resident sensory analysis, who actually earns an income as the sensory manager at John I. Haas, Jeff Daly. Jeff has been a longstanding friend of Brewlosophy who regularly joins Cade on the Brew Lab podcast to dig into the work he's doing on hops, and we are very excited for him to join us yet again for this month's live Q&A. If you want to be a part of his session, you have to make your pledge at patreon.com/Brewlosophy by Friday, March 29th, 2024, as Jeff will be taking questions that Saturday, the 30th. All past sessions are available on our private Patreon and Facebook pages, so you can go back and watch them whenever you like. Learn more about becoming a patron over at patreon.com/Brewlosophy. Another really easy way to support us is by using the links found at brewlosophy.com/support. When you're shopping online, your experience won't change at all, and we get a little kickback for that referral. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a rating and review of this show in Apple Podcast or wherever it is you listen to podcasts, that would be awesome as well. Thanks to everybody who has taken the time to already do this. Feedback is brought to you by Clawhammer Supply, who are known for their incredible all-in-one electric brewing systems. I've brewed on both their 120 and 240 volt systems. I'm telling you, these things are legit, efficient, easy to use, with a relatively small footprint. You're not going to be disappointed with one of these units. Plus, the guys behind the company run an amazing YouTube channel, which you can find by searching YouTube for Clawhammer Supply. If you're in the market for electric brewing gear or even just reasonably priced kettles and such, make sure to check out what Clawhammer Supply has to offer over at clawhammersupply.com. And don't forget to let them know Brewlosophy sent you when you're checking out. That's clawhammersupply.com. Listener Jam Glassman wrote in with feedback after listening to our episode on the current state of homebrewing, where we referred to data from the 2023 General Homebrewer Survey. This episode was published a while ago, but I feel like it's kind of relevant to the topic at hand. Jam said, I just wanted to say, as someone who is in some of those tiny slivers of the demographics, non-binary and bisexual, thank you for including these options on the survey. Many similar surveys only give male and female as options, and it's nice to see that there are a couple other brewers like me out there. What do you say, Steve?
This one is, I think, very relevant to the world that we live in right now. And I think that it's something that we have all at Brewlosophy have all like really taken into consideration, and being as inclusive as possible. And I don't think we would ever want to not include people. So I just think it's a kind of a no-brainer. Looking at, as a teacher, thinking about students that I come across every day, I try to kind of live by that and just be as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Steve. And it's mind blowing to me the pushback we get on being inclusive sometimes. It's from a very, very, very small segment of the people who listen to and read what it is that we do. But I'll tell you, so some of the comments that I think I talked about this on that episode that Jam is responding to here. Some of the comments that we get on the survey itself from people who clearly have a bone to pick with people who are different than them, I guess. It's just disgusting. And people just need to grow up. Let's be adults. It's kind of what I live by is if we're all being, big boys and girls and whatever else, then we can accept other people for being different than us. I think that's what makes being human interesting. So Jam, thank you for not only taking the time to complete last year's survey, but for reaching out and sharing your perspective. Seeing as I am the brewing stereotype, it's difficult to fully grasp that those who aren't like me, or the experiences of those who aren't like me. So, hearing from folks like you truly matters. And I think it's one way to make this hobby more inclusive. Speaking of the general homebrewer survey, we just opened up the 2024 version and would love for all of our listeners to complete it. You can find that link in the description of this episode as well as on a recent article at brewlosophy.com. Thanks again for reaching out, Jam. If you have show feedback, you can send it to feedback@brewlosophy.com or leave us a note on social media. We will be right back after this break.
Chilling work can be a chore, especially after a long brew day, but not with the Xchillerator Counterflow Chiller, which can chill a 5-gallon or 19-liter batch of wort in 5 minutes or less, leading to a strong cold break and clear wort in the fermenter. Brewlosophy's Matt Del Fiacco uses the Xchillerator Max and absolutely loves it. In addition to improved chilling efficiency, every Xchillerator comes with a 5-year warranty that covers the entire chiller for manufacturer defects. If you're looking to up your chilling game and a CFC is right for you, head over to xchillerator.com today. There's no denying that stainless steel is the best material for brewing equipment, and Delta Brewing Systems offers some of the lowest prices on high-quality stainless gear, like the Firm Tank, which in addition to holding 8 gallons or 30 liters of wort, comes with a domed lid to even further reduce the chances of a messy blow-off. Plus, it can hold up to 4 psi of pressure for closed transfers. Delta Brewing Systems also has their own line of brew kettles, as well as one of the lowest-priced all-in-one electric brewing systems out there, and their prices are shockingly low. If you're in the market for legit stainless gear that won't break the bank, do yourself a favor and head over to deltabrewingsystems.com today.
Don't you love an extra $100 in your pocket? Have a TurboTax expert file your taxes for you by March 31st to get $100 back instantly. Because no matter what moves you made last year, TurboTax makes them count. That means getting $100 back and 100% accurate taxes, only from Intuit TurboTax. Must file by 3/31. Credit only applicable to federal filing fees with TurboTax full service. Offer can be modified or terminated at any time.
Get cash for clothes at Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley. It's so easy. Recycle, earn cash, repeat. We pay cash on the spot for your trendy, gently used clothing, shoes, and accessories. At Plato's Closet, we buy all seasons, all day, every day. It's time to clean out your closet and cash in. Bring in your denim, graphic tees, athletic wear, shoes, handbags, and more. Sell your styles to Plato's Closet for cash. Then, do it again. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
I shared my experience with the AHA in the Brews Views episode a few weeks ago, and my co-host then was Will Lovell. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but Steve, perhaps you can share a little bit about your experience as a member of the AHA over the years.
I don't really remember when I joined. I'm guessing probably 2015-ish. And I went to Homebrew Con in 2017 in Minneapolis. Myself and 2 friends from my homebrew club drove up from Chicago area to Minneapolis. It was a great trip. We had a trailer in back of my buddy John's car, and we actually set up for our homebrew club night. and we had the tent that was, or the stand that had the couch from Wayne's World. If anyone's listening and remembers that, from 2017, we were there pouring beer. It was a great time. As a matter of fact, it was that conference in which I actually first met you, Marshall. Walking out of the Expo Center.
I remember it fondly, Steve. That's right. I remember it fondly. Yeah.
I was wearing the Brulosophy T-shirt, and you made a comment like "nice shirt, dork" or something like that, and we shook hands and we're talking for a little bit. And it was a great experience. We walking the expo floor. Myself, John, and Brian, my two friends that were with me. We knew that our friend Rex from the Brew Bag was going to be there, so we spent time with him. We're talking to him for a little bit, and then just doing a normal thing, drinking homebrew and just having a good time. Decided to go to the next conference in Portland, which was a blast, and overall pretty good experiences. So my finding out that things are changing was kind of sad. It wasn't something that I was thinking that it would change, but after hearing about it last year that they were going to join forces with JBF, I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. So it was a bit disappointing. And by the sounds of it, there are a lot of people who are disappointed. So I know I'm not the only one.
Absolutely. Are you still currently a member of the AHA? And if so, what are your thoughts on the future of your membership with them? Just so we can kind of set a baseline.
So after I joined AHA, I actually submitted a proposal to do a talk. I believe it was for the Portland the Portland conference, and it was rejected. However, they were very interested in me doing a webinar. So as a result of the webinar, I received a 3-year membership. After that, I did let it lapse for a little bit, and then got back into AHA for another subscription for a year, and then after that I have not renewed it. So currently I'm not an AHA member.
So again, to establish this so that we're as transparent as possible, 2 people on this episode, unlike the original one with Will, he is still a member. The 2 people who are talking about it today, Steve Thanos and Marshall Schott, are both ex-members of the AHA. We are not current members, so make of that what you will. I just wanted to make sure that we talk about that so it doesn't sound like we're speaking from perspectives we are no longer a part of. Now, before we get started, I think it is important to point out that what we're going to be sharing today is feedback we received directly from listeners of that last episode. We are not dressing anything up or cherry picking what we agree with. These are simply the first set of emails that we received, edited only to include just the pertinent information. That's the only editing that I did on these this feedback that we received. Most start out with simple pleasantries, and we chose to kind of put that aside because it would just kill time. We don't need that in there. And then I'm going to read them in the order that we received them. I just don't want anybody getting any wrong ideas about our intentions here. So, all right, the first bit of feedback comes from Chris Lee, who said, I too am pissed with the AHA as I've seen the focus continue to surround the Brewers Association. Concur with the sentiment expressed. I actually attended the GABF when they had Homebrew Con NHC as part of the event. I also attended the 2018 Homebrew Con in Portland and attended the last San Diego conference, which aside from club night was horrendous. It started with the massively disappointing opening ceremony filled with drivel and boredom. The exhibitor hall looked like a school science fair. Very sad. The AHA has gone out of its way to attract a demographic that quite frankly does not want to brew. Why has the AHA neglected the people that do homebrew and will likely continue to homebrew? When you ignore your base, the base jumps ship. Unfortunately, not too many years ago, I tripped for a lifetime membership as I got tired of redoing my membership every year. Yes, a horrendous investment investment in hindsight. I think so many brewers started because there were no options unless you brewed them. The current generation of young beer drinkers have no idea what beer selection was like 30 years ago. Perhaps the downturn in craft brewing will limit the choice enough to make people curious again. Also, the $8 to $12 pint costs will place a dampener on people who have less expandable income and force them to other beverages or force them to pick up a mash paddle and dough in. Homebrewing is not dead, but the failed AHA killed itself by becoming so successful via the Brewers Association that it lost its way. Sad but not sad, as if it can't compete currently, it can't continue. And as with all voids, they are filled with alternatives that some leadership will be doomed to repeat failure. Mahalo for all you do. Chris Lee lives in Hawaii, so hence the mahalo. What do you think about that one, Steve?
First of all, I really feel bad for Chris for investing all that money in a lifetime membership. There were times when I thought about that, and I just couldn't swing it financially. I actually know of somebody who did that once, and I don't think he's brewing anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't. That's a troubling one. There's a couple of things you don't mess with, people's families and their money. And so, Chris has been affected by that greatly with a lifetime membership that is no longer really serving him much. The idea that the AHA kind of became bigger than it really should have been is really signs, at least in my opinion, of kind of they grew too quick, and they weren't able to sustain the changes that we see on a daily basis, with our homebrew clubs, homebrew shops that are not around anymore, or ones that are just mediocre at best. So there's quite a bit of kind of give and take, like, as a teacher, your students aren't going to perform very well if you're not teaching them well, right? Kind of like the AHA in terms of, well, if you have this governing body that's kind of not really doing much, then yeah, maybe the hobby's going to suffer, and maybe it's not going to be as glamorous and as righteous as it was back, in a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't want it to sound like I'm just blaming the AHA. I actually, it's a unique situation because homebrewing saw this meteoric rise in popularity in the last decade and a half or so, the last 15 years. And so, arguably the AHA just kind of grew along with that. What they failed to do, in hindsight is 2020, right? What they failed to do was pump the brakes and try to keep it tempered, because like all things, when it's growing that fast, there's going to be some pullback. There's going to be, the bubble is going to burst at some point. And I think there are ways, we learned this through the whole housing crisis, even, that there were much better ways that we could have gone about things with that growth to hopefully avoid where we're at today. And that just didn't happen. And I get it. There's something very appealing about, that massive growth, the massive influx of money that was coming in. I mean, the AHA was making tons of cash there for a while, just print money, as they say. But yeah, it got a little bit too big for its britches. I love hearing from people like Chris, who have been a member of the AHA for as long as they have, right? I'm I joined in 2014 or 15. So I've only got a decade on it. Well, and I haven't even been a member that entire decade. Chris, it sounds like, has really been plugged into it for a while. So he has a very unique, experienced perspective. So yeah, who knows if they're fully doomed. I struggle to see how they're going to pull out of this, Chris. So I'm kind of with you. One would hope that the focus, if they are going to try to correct things, which who knows, maybe they're in too steep of a tailspin. If they're going to try to correct, I do think they need to sit down and figure out who their target audience is. Of course, inclusiveness is important, but you can't do it at the expense of ignoring and dropping out all of the people who have already paid you their dues at the same time. There's got to be some balance there so that everybody feels like they're getting a good piece. So the next comment comes from Steve Fisher, who says, the show about that interview was spot on. Now, Steve is referring to the interview that Julia Hertz from the AHA did with John Hall on the Drink Beer, Think Beer podcast. So he says, the show about that interview is spot on. I have a few thoughts about this myself. I concur with some comments that the Brewers Association likely directed the AHA to be part of GABF without any consideration of logistics. It's surprising that no one thought it basically impossible to permit thousands of AHA members with the ability to pour each other as much homebrew as they want in the Colorado Convention Center alongside GABF attendees who have a different level of access to alcohol. Additional concerns were probably things like glass bottles on the open floor. I actually think that behind the scenes, this issue surfaced and they quickly realized that open share of homebrew would be impossible. Should they have thought about this a year ago? You bet. I was surprised that a public figure like Julia Hertz wasn't briefed or trained on how to respond in an interview. Journalists like John Hall are permitted and at times obligated to ask tough questions. Her lashing back with an ad hominem attack about the size of John's mortgage payment when being asked about the financial health of the nonprofit was not only unprofessional, but it also revealed to me that it was indeed a soft spot that Julia was trying to shield. We know when a public figure is hiding something. Honesty would have been far better. Plainly stating that AHA is shedding members and needs to rebuild would have resonated with me. Blaming craft beer or Gen Z doesn't work. It was invigorating that a female was named in 2021 to lead the AHA. It's a welcome change and a terrific means of illustrating the efforts for the organization to diversify. My hope is that this emerging issue with Homebrew Con and membership is considered an opportunity for a complete transformation. Perhaps a group of homebrewers can cobble together financing to acquire the ailing nonprofit from the BA and shape it into the organization we wish it could be.
Mr. Fisher, those were some good words that you typed there. I really agree with Steve wholeheartedly here. And I think it's unfortunate, like you were kind of making mention of before about the AHA kind of taking the brunt of this lash out, if you will. And I think there's a bigger problem. And I think Steve's comment kind of echoes this reoccurring thought in my head that it feels like the homebrewers across the area are here. We're kind of like the kids at the kids table, and we're not really ready to go to the adult table. And that's how I'm feeling right now. And I can remember back when I was a kid and being at that kids table, that kind of pissed me off. I didn't like that. And now, you know, we're both in our 40s, yourself and I, Marshall, and you know, we're not kids. We can kind of see through the bullshit, you know, if you will.
Yeah.
And we know what's going on.
Absolutely. It feels like they're trying to hide something from us. I mean, that was what I was focusing on so much in that last episode, is that it feels like even more, it's pretty obvious that they're just not being transparent with us. And I don't know why. You know, I have this thing in my real job where I work right now. There's some stuff going on with leadership that's just really ugly. And it's the same exact sentiment that you're talking about, Steve, that it's like, why aren't you, we all see what's happening. We all see how awful you guys are being, but you're not sharing any of that with us. And it's only making things worse. You've got a whole group of 30,000 plus or minus a few members who have paid you good money to be a member of this organization. And then you're just going to go and hide all this stuff from them. I'm with Steve. I mean, you know, Steve Fisher, and you, Steve Thanos, but Steve is a patron of ours. He's been a dedicated patron of ours for years and regularly joins us on our monthly live video chat sessions where we just shoot the shit with each other. And this did come up in the last session because it's such a notable point right now. And yeah, he shared these thoughts and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think, you know, you've got some really, intelligent people who've thought about this stuff and who are really want to see the AHA do well. They've invested their money in it, and we get treated this way. Yeah, it's like we're sitting at the kids' table, and they're still treating us like these. They're the little petty little kids who are just going to whine about the fact they don't get to bring their own beer to the festival. Oh, geez, no, that's what it's all about. And for you, you know, AHA and Brewers Association not to recognize that and to lean into us a little bit and actually try to understand where we're coming from. It's just kind of bad. It's a bad look, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. And considering the fact that I know for a fact that just kind of being around Facebook groups over the years, people really, really cherish that weekend when homebrewers get together. Maybe we don't see each other every day. I know, like I said earlier, this was an opportunity for me to meet you, very early on in 17. I probably wouldn't have been a part of Brewlosophy if I didn't meet you. There's still something to be said about, face-to-face contact with human beings. We are still human, with all this technology that is fantastic and sometimes baffles me and bewilders me because I'm old. I get that. But at the same time, there's still that interaction that we want. And I know that there's meetups with like
the Milk the Funk group, probably.
Milk the Funk.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They love to get together and have share homebrew and stuff like that and talk and whatnot. And chances are there's guys and women from all over the place that get together. So yeah, just to get rid of all of that, you're kind of missing the point there, AHA. And I get it. Maybe there's something bigger that's going on, but at least let us know. Let us know what's going on. We did kind of invest in this whole thing, so we should have at least a knowledge of what is happening.
We deserve honesty is what I would say, is that
Right.
we deserve to be told the truth. And it's very obvious that there's a lot being withheld at this point. So the next comment comes from William Babcock, AKA Whiskey Will. And he starts off with this. Cons suck, and I don't mean prisoners. I have myriad hobbies that have various iterations of the suffix and or hyphenated con associated with them. The few times I did attend one, I found it wasn't worth the time or effort, at least for me. When I got back into homebrewing whole hog in 2015, I toyed with the idea of attending one, but as much as I love learning, I decided listening to someone lecture for hours on end, horrible flashbacks of monotone college professors regurgitating text from the book verbatim aside, I just wasn't into it. I also find that most things that start with even the most noble of intentions, if there is money involved, ends up corrupting what was once enjoyable to focus on financial gain. Quick aside, my best friend's father was a detective in the town we grew up in, and he was one of the people who helped start the Police Unity Tour, where they ride bikes from New Jersey to DC every year to raise money for fallen officers. Well, after several years of being president of it, he suddenly left. When I asked him why, he would tell me he would have found some things that were happening behind the curtain he did not approve of, which I think a savvy person can infer what that was given the topic. Much like Bearded Will, that's our very own Will Lovell, I, Whiskey Will, share some justifiably jaded views about corporations and intentions, even as something as innocuous as the AHA. Again, what started out pure and noble almost always ends up corrupt and self-serving. I keep hoping that one day we will learn that politics ruins everything good. All that said, I still love the festivals. If people want their money's worth, don't go to cons, go to festivals. Like here in New Jersey, the Atlantic City Beer Festival is amazing. Hell, last year, 311 played. Beer from like 70 breweries, 20 food trucks, a gorgeous sunny day, and 311 playing, all for $100 for the VIP or $50 for the regular ticket. What? I personally believe that's where the focus is shifting to. People want to have more fun these days, especially after COVID. So festivals and activities surrounding beer and or cider, seltzer, etc. is where people's minds are gravitating to. Just my 8 cents. This was too long for just 2 cents. Will, you know that I agree with you. I feel like I said a lot of similar stuff in that last episode. I didn't put it as as fun as you did here, but I agree. I think what people are looking for is a break. They're looking to have some fun, and yes, we want to learn stuff. But I feel like in the modern age, and this is an area where I again, I'm presuming, but the AHA sort of lapsed a little bit. They had this idea that people want to go and sit at a lecture. I'm sure there are some that do, but the people that I talk to, that's not their favorite part of going to Homebrew Con. It's the community. It's hanging out. It's trying all these different beers with people that you normally just talk to on internet forums. That was never the focus. And in fact, I think what it seems to me is that the AHA may have been listening to some of the let's call them the OG members of the group who didn't like the direction that others like us were trying to pull it, which was much more of a festival atmosphere, and wanted to stick to the old school ways. And now you've got these two factions, so to speak, that are kind of pulling the AHA in different directions, and you just can't sustain that. So it really does. This is what I mean. The AHA is going to have to rethink how they want to do this. And if it's not going to generate income, at least you should have a group of people who are as dedicated for a while, at least, to the other way of doing it so that you can keep yourself going.
I would have to think that there's got to be something out there that they could generate some ideas where we have, like, maybe, as Whiskey Will is suggesting here, these festivals, maybe multiple times a year in different regions. And, let it become less of the educational, let's go sit in a lecture hall. And I think about that now, listening to or reading Will's comment actually makes me think about, teaching beer classes is something that I'm been starting lately. And, how am I being heard by people, coming into a brewery talking about beer styles? So it's definitely something that I'm conscious of. Right. And I don't, not everyone's going to be geeking out on this stuff like, you and I are going to do, Marshall, but at the same time, it's all something that we should be thinking about. Let's put it that way. And if things are not going the way that they were, then maybe it is time for a change. And who knows, maybe the AHA has a grand plan. Maybe they are going to do something in the future. My hunch is that they're not going to, but maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. Who knows?
Yeah, my hunch is right there with you. I just don't see, having done the things that I've done business wise, and just my experiences. I don't know how you pull out of this when you've essentially pissed off, a good chunk of your membership, and I don't see, there's not enough heart in it at this point for a lot of us that we even, it's, what are you doing for us basically? And that sounds kind of curt, but I'm just speaking from, experience and my own perspective, but I've heard from a lot of people about this. I just don't think people are, again, you got to have your heart in it fully in order to want to throw more cash at something that's already drowning. And I just don't see how you're going to convince people to want to do that with what you've taken away so far. So again, just my perspective. I could be completely wrong, but I'm, that's what I'm expecting in the future from them. Final comment for this segment comes from the Traveling Homebrewer. And I knew I was going to get some stuff like this. We certainly did. Again, I'm reading these in the order I received them. So Traveling Homebrewer says, I would definitely be in for the Brewlosophy party. Be awesome to do it with Yakima Valley hops around hop harvest. I've always wanted to go. Steve, for a fact that this is something that we have been talking about since prior to COVID. The only reason we didn't do it earlier is because of COVID. I mean, we had a whole plan with Yakima Valley hops, 3 or 4 years ago that we were building up. And then in 2020, everything shut down and we shelved that whole idea all the way up until about a year ago. And we just kind of started re-talking about how it would look. And with the downturn in things and brewing in general, again, it's just not something we can put all of our focus on and all of our energy in yet. But it is absolutely an option. I mean, we've done parties before, right before I talked about it in that last episode, right before Homebrew Con, we've thrown these parties. We can organize them. We've sold out every time we've done anything like it. So I don't think attracting people would be the issue. It's organizing the whole thing and ensuring that we do it right. And by me, when I say we do it right, what I'm referring to is we give attendees what it is they really want. And from what I've heard, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this, Steve. That's experiences. It's not just going and listening to somebody talk. It's interacting during the talk. It's doing, hop selection, a mock hop selection. It's drinking Hop Chronicles beers and filling out the surveys and then talking about that as a group as opposed to being lectured to. And then it's traveling to local breweries and all hanging out together and doing things like that. So those have been some of the ideas that we've been kind of tossing around. Is it happening this year? I can all but guarantee we are not going to do anything like that in 2024 just because of the state of things. But it's certainly something that we would consider for the future.
I would love that. I've always thought about hop harvest being a really rad time, and I have always missed out on it. So if we get a chance to do this, I am all on board. And I think that the Traveling Homebrewer has some great thoughts here, including Yakima Valley hops in all of this. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I think that everything with homebrewing right now, we're forgetting the simple things. We're forgetting the story behind the beers, right? And hell, at one point in time, I was thinking about doing a a blog or something just based on stories of homebrew, right? And every beer that you brew, well, I shouldn't say everyone. Maybe it's just a beer that you just really want to brew because you really want to drink it. But there's always typically as a story right behind it. I would be interested in hearing people's stories, and just, a collection of us just standing around and sipping that person's beer and hearing the story about, and why did you do this? Why did you do that? And of course it's going to take, some people to, have that same desire. But that's what makes, I think, home brewing really fun, is that story behind why I'm brewing that beer. So that would be fun to me.
No, I'm with you, and I think really what you're speaking to on the grander scale is just community, and
definitely,
and having that community. And I think a big part of what Brewlosophy has been. One of our goals has been fostering that community, and even with people who can't stand what we're doing, we're not known for striking back. If you disagree with something, well, that's cool. Disagree with it. You may hate us, but you're still in this community, and we're all in this together. And that sounds cheesy as hell, but I really genuinely believe that you don't have to agree with everything that's going on out there. I think where a lot of people feel burned is that the AHA no longer feels, and they lost this a while ago for me, like a part of that community. It felt like they were, like you said, the parents at the parents' table, and they relegated us to the kids' table. And we're looking up, giving them our money and saying, "Oh, make it better for us," and they're not really doing much for us. So I understand the burn that some of us feel because of that. But yeah, to what the traveling homebrewer is saying here, if something comes out, I'll tell you. You guys listening to this episode are going to be some of the first to know, or this podcast. You'll be the first to know, and we may very well plan something, get something moving in the future, and hopefully be able to provide homebrewers with something that's a lot of fun to engage in that community. So, all right, we've got to get to our final break. We're going to be right back with more listener feedback.
After a long brew day, the last thing I want to do is waste more time chilling wort. I've tried so many different options, and ultimately I settled on the super efficient immersion chillers made by Jaded Brewing. With the King Cobra and Hydra, I'm able to chill my entire batch of wort from boiling to just a few degrees above groundwater temperature in as little as 6 minutes. If an immersion chiller is right for your brewery, then do yourself a favor and check out all of the rad options Jaded Brewing has to offer at jadedbrewing.com. And be sure to let them know Brewlosophy sent you. As every brewer knows, the best beer requires the best hops, which Yakima Valley Hops provides fresh from the source to brewers around the world, carrying everything from classics like Cascade to modern favorites like Galaxy and Mosaic, as well as other ingredients and gear. Yakima Valley Hops has it all. And don't forget to check out their new podcast, The Late Edition, where the YVH crew goes into depth on our favorite plant with industry experts. Head over to YakimaValleyHops.com now to see all they have to offer, and subscribe to The Late Edition wherever it is you listen to podcasts.
Hey y'all, Darius Rucker here. A lot of people ask me, what inspires your music? And one of the big things is a strong sense of place. That's why I love my home state of South Carolina and want to share the awesome things it has to offer. From the beautiful mountains down to the sunny coast, it's got it all. Not to mention two of my personal favorites, great golf and amazing food. Come see why I love this place. Visit discoversouthcarolina.com.
Get cash for clothes at Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley. It's so easy. Recycle, earn cash, repeat. We pay cash on the spot for your trendy, gently used clothing, shoes, and accessories. At Plato's Closet, we buy all seasons, all day, every day. It's time to clean out your closet and cash in. Bring in your denim, graphic tees, athletic wear, shoes, handbags, and more. Sell your styles to Plato's Closet for cash. Then, do it again. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
I've been surprised so far with how homogenous the opinions about the AHA and Homebrew Con have been. It really does seem like most people are kind of on the same page. Let's see if it stays that way. The next bit of feedback comes from Clayton Latham, who said a lot of sad info on your most recent show about the AHA and homebrewing in general. Quote, grassroots efforts and more localized events does sound like the way to grow the hobby. If I ruled the world, he says, the AHA would team up with podcasters, beer influencers, and local homebrew clubs and shops and really push county fair events. All of the walks of life go to the fair and can watch homebrewing. I'm not sure about the legalities of serving homebrew to fair attendees, but I'm sure there's a way to make that work. Please make sure the beer is appealing. So many events are marketed at existing homebrewers when we should be trying to appeal to those not in the hobby, and that should be the job of a national organization supported to spend supporter money on growing the hobby. Advertise in places that could attract new interest and memberships and grow. Appeal to a younger crowd. Sure, sourdough is more practical because people need to eat and don't need to drink beer, but everyone waste their time doing something. Why not crafting beer at home? But they won't if they don't know it's an option or how easy it can be. I'm an AHA member and I get Zymergy but forget to read it. Do you know if they've written articles about ways to get members, families, and friends interested? And more importantly, ways to keep from repelling potentially interested ones? How many homebrewers are throwing their double IPAs in people's faces and saying, quote, this is craft beer, you should make this, and turning people off to craft beer and homebrewers? Teach homebrewers how to attract, not repel, like a How to Win Friends and Influence People book, but specific to beer and homebrewing. I've got some comments on this one, Steve. What say you?
I really like the second to last line of teach homebrewers how to attract, not repel. I think should be stated that it's the AHA that should be, attracting people and not repelling. I think the homebrewers are full on board with the attracting and looking for a good time and getting together and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. These are some good words by Clayton, and I agree with him. The thing with the younger brewers, our younger crowd, that one baffles me, and it baffled me as much when I was president of my homebrew club in trying to include more people who didn't look like me and you, right, Marshall? And thinking, how can we attract more women? How can we attract people of different ethnic backgrounds? And, I went in and sat in on seminars with Annie Johnson, our good friend, and at Homebrew Con. And I was left with not really knowing how to do that as a club president, and trying to, get a new face into a homebrew club meeting. A lot of it has to do with people wanting to do it first. I can talk to you until I'm red in the face and, beg and plead, please, please, please come to our meetings. If you just don't want to, then you don't want to. And, I'm not going to fight you over that. That's your decision. And a lot of it is left to choice. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to, the younger crowd's not into craft beer. That's cool. I get that. So, where is that? What does that leave us? I don't know. But I'm sure you have all the answers, right, Marshall?
Oh yeah. All the answers here. No, I feel like what Clayton is saying, it goes along nicely. At least my, what I elucidate from what he's saying, and kind of my own bias is that it is very repelling for anybody if you go to them and you say, hey, that thing that you're already doing, it's stupid. You should do what I think is better. That is not a very welcoming approach. And when you've got the AHA, this is my opinion. There's no way to prove this, I don't think, but I would contend that the biggest group of people that are the next potential homebrewers are the people who at least enjoy beer on some level. even if that's Bud Miller or Coors. And for us to sit over here and just shit on them nonstop and think that we are so high and mighty and so much better than them, and here, put this silly label on your bottle so we can make sure people know that they're drinking craft, that whole mentality is something I've never understood, because what you are doing is you're lambasting those who may actually have some interest in coming in here. I mean, good luck going and trying to convince people who, because of their generation or because of their health or whatever it might be, they don't drink. Oh, good luck trying to convince them to brew. I mean, you're not going to attract those people. That's just, the people that you're going to get are people who already like beer on some level. So, but let's shit on them. Let's make them feel like they are below us and that we are entitled and elite in our own eyes. It's not a good look. It never has been, it wasn't that stuff. It wasn't that silly, I'm better than you mentality that brought me into the AHA at all. It was the community and that welcoming aspect of it. And my hope would be, that we open up those arms a little bit and we become more welcoming and we stop this silly, childish, we're better than you crap, and that we can bring people in. I love the comment that Clayton says that, this is craft beer, you should make this. I had a friend who no longer homebrews, but back in the day, he was a part of our club, local club here, and he would always share this meme that he made of somebody like pouring a homebrew down another person's throat, and he's like, this is my homebrew beer, you got to drink it, and that is kind of funny because it's kind of true. You bring beer to a regular tailgate party, everyone's drinking Coors Light, and you're the only one with homebrew, and people are like, all right, dude, we've had enough of that. You don't need to share it with us every time you come out anywhere. We have to think about those things. And I get it. There are people who just don't like, pale yellow lager. That's fine with me. There are people who have issues with the corporate side of things. That's fine with me. But when you've got the homebrewers organization, the AHA, encouraging that level of stupidity, I just, there's a finality to that. And I think we're seeing some of the consequences of being that way. That's just my opinion. So next comment comes from Nicholas Lane from Pride Pint Brewing Essentials out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Nicholas says, you mentioned the issues with getting the younger generations into the hobby. Unfortunate but true in many ways. As for myself, I'm 27 years old, one of the last millennials born, and I'm in the process of starting my own homebrew shop in Bay City, Michigan, maybe he's from Michigan, not North Carolina, but under the name Pride Pint Brewing Essentials. We're going to be just one of a few in the state of Michigan, and I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on how to keep things interesting for the entire community, not just the old folks that have been doing this for the last decade or so. Who you calling old, Nicholas? I want to entice our younger 21 and older members of the community to at least try the hobby, as us brewers know that first time could be all it takes to turn a novice, unsure prospect into a passionate brewer like us. I know there must be some ideas that can be thrown around to push this new generation into the love of brewing. As our motto states here at Pride Pint, we want you to learn to love brewing. Any advice you may have will be greatly appreciated, along with any advice you may have for an up-and-coming homebrew shop. Let's keep things we all love relevant, exciting, and fun for the new generations to come.
My first thought was get out to as many beer festivals as possible, and just start talking to people. Word of mouth, I think, is so underrated, and it is essential, I think, for a new business to get out there and talk to people and just see what people are interested in, and and start to ask that question, like, what are you interested in? What would make you interested in home brewing? And I don't know. I mean, it's not rocket science, but at the same time, it's still complicated enough because there's a lot of free will that goes into it, right? And people are ultimately going to make their choices. So, but yeah, for a business to start running effectively, I think communication is key.
Yeah, we both have kids that are in their teens, Steve, and I can tell you right now that my 15-year-old daughter, and you have a 15-year-old kid as well, or how old's Basil?
13.
13. That's right. So yeah. So they're the same age as my son. But my 15-year-old daughter, it amazes me. I mean, she's 6 years. She is 6 years from being able to legally drink. It amazes me how different teenagers are this year than when I was a teenager. I mean, I was out getting into all kinds of trouble. Our kids just aren't doing that. I think it's because of technology in part, but maybe it's because we learned how we want to parent differently than our parents, and it's actually having some, I don't know, positive impact. I don't know, but they're just different. And for me to pretend that I can understand where that generation, where their mind is and the way they think about things, I have to admit that I just don't get it. I wasn't doing the same things that they're doing at that age. So I think a big part of it is, and it kind of goes along with what you said, Steve, that we have to be open to hearing what it is they're interested in and not presuming we know. When I first I bought my homebrew kit up in Bellingham, Washington at North Corner Brewing Supply. I walked in, the guy behind the counter, his name is Mars. He says, "Hey, what do you want to make?" And I said, "Well, I drink a lot of Coors Light." And he scoffed at me. Now, he was a cool guy. We ended up becoming pretty friendly because I was in the shop so often. But imagine if that one person comes in and they're like, "You know what? Fuck this. I don't need to hear this. I'm out of here. I'll just go buy a case myself." Or you could have a kit that is designed to make something that is somewhat like a Coors Light, and now you've just captured another person. I don't see why you wouldn't do that, except for entitlement and trying to feel better than. And so I say this to Nicholas, be open to that. Don't be a hater, man. Bring these people in who are if they want to come in and they want to make a White Claw clone, have the ability to walk them through that, because that may be what they're interested in. And honestly, just because it's not beer, they are still coming into your shop to buy the stuff to make these other things. Give them that opportunity and encourage it. And then they may be introduced. I mean, I never made cider. I didn't make cider for the first 15 years that I brewed beer. And now I love it. I morphed into that or evolved into that. It may very well be
Same here.
You know what I'm saying? And it may very well be that these people come in and want to make something other than beer, but then they evolve into wanting to make beer. And now you've captured another, group of people. Again, I can harp on the same thing over and over and over. And it's just that it's so childish to me, whining about, big beer and yada, yada. You know what? You're not doing yourself any favors, AHA and BA. So I get it that you've got to promote craft, but boy, you don't want to do that at the expense of ignoring half of the freaking population. So next comment comes from Mark Wojcik, who says, I've been an AHA member for 14 years and I enjoyed the discussion about the AHA and their change of plans for 2024. I have one thought to contribute, which I haven't heard yet in the various discussions. Specifically, I think homebrewers join the AHA only after they have already started the hobby. We join as we become more advanced brewers for the various reasons you discussed in your podcast, conferences, NHC competition, magazine, etc. In other words, the AHA was never responsible for the growth of the hobby. Their fortunes and all those great homebrew cons rose with the growth of the hobby, and now they're declining with the fall of the hobby. Since their original mission of making homebrewing legal in every state has been accomplished, the AHA has been struggling to redefine its purpose. Trying to attract new homebrewers and grow the hobby is a laudable new mission, but hobbies don't work that way. Hobbies and trends evolve for very complex reasons as part of the zeitgeist. Stamp collecting and ham radio used to be huge. I actually think it's okay if the AHA goes away or moves to the background with some much narrower purpose. Things change and everybody should just relax, not worry, and have a homebrew.
I have to say I kind of agree with Mark, specifically with the idea that, there's still a lot of choice that's involved in all of this. It's a hobby. It's not something that's making me money. It's not something that is going to allow me to retire earlier, right? Although people assume that automatically when they hear that I'm a home brewer. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, let's face it. The reason why I'm not an AHA member is because doesn't really serve its purpose for me as a home brewer anymore. So maybe there's some truth to all this that they're not really the one to be the one to like grow the community or grow the membership. But at the same time, you still have members who are, relevant, who are still giving you money. I think that's where our problem is, basically. So I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts, Marshall.
Well, so there's the way I think about what Mark, to kind of summarize what Mark wrote here, and I 100% fully agree with this, is that homebrewers don't need the AHA. The AHA needs homebrewers at this point. And so, there's not anything that the AHA is going to do specifically for homebrewers that's going to keep growing the hobby necessarily. Yes, because they get so much money from homebrewers, they're able to do events like Homebrew Con, but look what happens when it's not, so disorganized as it is. And we don't even know why. I mean, they're not sharing with us why. All we're hearing is, oh, there's this, that's like all the finger pointing, but really what's actually happening behind the scenes, we don't know. We don't need that. And I really do think that there are bigger and better things that can come from, should the AHA just kind of fizzle out, I do think something's going to come in and replace it, fill that void. Who knows what it'll be, but I could see it being, arguably the AHA was very successful over the last 20 years. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that. It's the decisions that were made over the last 4 or 5 years that have really caused this downturn, I think, in their membership, not necessarily in brewing, of course. But yeah, do we even need the AHA? I think it's a valid question. And I think that, there's a lot of opinions out there that probably side with Mark and me on it. So final comment for this episode comes from Ryan Harrigan, who says, is it time for BrewCon? Here's another one. Back in 2019, we had an impromptu meetup with the Brew Club in Asheville, North Carolina that Cade put together after the BYO boot camp. It was originally planned to be a small event that turned into a fantastic event or evening of chatting homebrew and exploring the different spots in Asheville. The reason why the turnout was so big, in my opinion, is because fans of the show and members of the virtual club, the Brew Club, had an awesome opportunity to chat about the topics of the show finally in person and not behind a computer screen, and that was awesome. So I want to preface, I understand that Brewlosophy is not your primary job, and I absolutely love everything you do, so thank you. But is it time for Brewlosophy to take this show on the road and with a live podcast and BrewCon? I want to preface, I'm saying I am just the guy with a grand idea and zero clue how to carry it out. If the younger generation, are we still young? Oh, this just made me sad, he says, wants to keep this thing going, then let's have the coolest group in the industry keep this ship afloat. Again, just a giant idea that's absolutely going to be a ton of work, and I have no idea who it would work for, but I figured it would make interesting show feedback. Thanks for everything you do. You all are awesome. Well, yeah, Ryan, I already spoke to thoughts about, doing our own party type of deal in the future. I like the idea of a traveling show thing. The thing is, homebrewing just isn't that big of a hobby. I mean, I listen to a lot of other podcasts, particularly like true crime podcasts, some sports podcasts, and they're huge. They really are very big because the people who follow that group is just so much bigger. So they have the resources to be able to take their show on the road and record live and do all of that. For us, I mean, this is just such a niche hobby that it would be far more expensive for us to pull that off. And so what we've typically done is paired it with, some other event, a conference or something like that. And we try to do something there that's along those lines. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Steve? I think Ryan's speaking to the same thing that last commenter was as well on maybe Brewlosophy can step in on some level and do something fun for the homebrewing community out there.
I've always thought that we've had a pretty decent handle on, the pulse of homebrewers, and it's been something that has grown for the last 10 years. I knew it when even before I was a member of Brewlosophy, and I know it now as one of the contributors, especially by reading Ryan's words. And thank you, Ryan, for all your kind sentiment. It is much appreciated. And I would have to say someone who attended the pre-funk party in Minneapolis, there's nothing like a brew party. So I would understand the excitement that Ryan has about this potential, this ever, becoming a thing. But at the same time, I think that it's something that would take a whole lot of work. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be something that could ever happen.
Yeah, exactly. And what I don't want is for people to think that we're not, thinking about doing this. I know. I mean, there's two sides of this for me. One, it feels a little bit, I don't want to say self-righteous. I feel like, oh, we have the ability to do this big thing. We are not making the money the AHA was making. We don't have the ability to put on a Homebrew Con in the way that they did. But we do have, members or contributors of Brewlosophy who have experience throwing events like this. You were the club president. I've worked with other people on developing events, the pre-funk parties and stuff like that. So we have those ties and we understand how to do it. It really does we have to have the people who want to come out, which I don't think that'd be the biggest issue. And then we have to have the time and energy to invest in planning the whole thing again, so that people who pay to come and do this thing feel like they got, that it was worth it. And so, again, the more and more we hear from people, the more motivated I think we are to try to come up with something. But let's, for 2024, maybe even 2025, I think we need to take a step back and watch and see where things go, see what ultimately ends up happening with the AHA, and we'll go from there. But that is all the time we've got for this episode. I'm sure we're going to continue to receive feedback on this topic, which we will get to in future episodes. Thanks so much to everybody who wrote in. We really do appreciate it. Steve, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Keep brewing beer and keep talking beer, and we'll continue talking about beer and brewing beer and writing about beer because it's what we love, and it's a fun hobby, and I don't want it to die out. So
amen to that. And, if you enjoy drinking a Miller Lite while you're brewing beer like I do, don't feel bad about that. Don't feel bad about that. And if you're listening to this right now with a friend of yours who happens to be a home brewer and you're wondering what we're talking about and you like Bud Light and you've thought maybe I'd like to brew my own, then go give it a shot. Let's stop, nixing people from this because they're different than we are in any form at all. I think that's what we've got to start focusing on. So, well, don't forget to listen to and subscribe to the Brew Lab podcast, where host Kate Job takes you into the lab with brewing professionals to discuss the fascinating work they're doing on our favorite beverage. And make sure to head to brewlosophy.com to stay current on all of the fun beer and brewing stuff we are up to.
The Brewlosophy podcast is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors, as well as all of our rad listeners. We seriously could not do this without you. Cheers to everyone who has subscribed and left a review of our show. It makes a huge difference. If you haven't yet, please consider doing so. Head over to brewlosophy.com/support to view a list of ways you can easily help us to continue producing this podcast. If you want a reward for your support, visit patreon.com/brewlosophy. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Brewlosophy podcast. Until then, think beer.
Start off the morning with some hot tea, lemon and honey, cause it suits my throat. Put some herb in the bowl, yeah, it's homegrown. Ain't gotta go through the middleman no more. Life is good, the likelihood of me.
When Cynthia came to TurboTax, she had just launched her new side gig, a true crime podcast.
I'm a first-rate detective with a golden voice.
As her TurboTax expert, I made her second income count by guaranteeing 100% accurate filing and her maximum refund.
What did she do with that refund? Find out next week.
Switch to Intuit TurboTax and make your moves count. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Experts only available with TurboTax Live.